In 2002, thousands of black security officers guarded Los Angeles' most prestigious buildings. Nearly 70% were African American, working in isolation and under constant harassment while securing the economic engine of Los Angeles. The Service Employees International Union began organizing to bring these workers into a union, but they faced a challenge. The union needed to rebuild trust with the black community, still hurt by the loss of union janitorial jobs in previous decades. This series of interviews gives some insight into the monumental task of getting the union recognized.
Yes, I'm Pastor William D. Smart Jr., President and CEO of the Southern Christian Leadership Conference of Southern California, and also co-pastor of Christ Liberation Ministries and Executive Director of Hurting and Hungry Charities.
What convinced you to get involved in this labor campaign?
Well, at the time I was working as a Director of External Organizing at the Los Angeles Alliance for a New Economy, and also being a pastor, but it became my job at Lane to really work on this campaign. Lane got involved with, at the time, SEIU 1877 to provide research and community coalition building for the campaign. And quite naturally, because I was involved that way, but as a local pastor, I was very much concerned about this campaign.
How did you see this fitting into SCLC's mission?
Well, at the time, it was very important because the research had come out that if these brothers and sisters were organized, that it would bring $50 million back into the community of South LA. And I thought that was very important for the economic development and the personal development of individuals in South LA. We thought it was a justice issue because Dr. King was involved with labor all of the time, and he said that it was very important that we recognize labor as one of the institutions and one of the avenues that could help rise the lives of African Americans.
What strategies did you use to build support among other clergy?
Well, we first of all convened them, and then we began to let them know the importance of this being the first time that African Americans were attempting to do something like this in this capacity. And so we began to have meetings with them. We began to bring the strategy and also the research that we were doing to them so that they could see that how their very members would benefit from it, and that it would, of course, allow them to have more revenue coming into their churches, because quite a few of the members or the prospective members were members of their congregations.
How did you approach any initial skepticism about SEIU in the black community?
Well, prior to me getting involved, there was just a concern that SEIU was more concerned about Latinos than they were African Americans, to be very honest. And there were a couple of campaigns earlier that you would have thought that was really a reality, but because of Lola Cuevas and certain other people that had gotten involved, and they even brought Jesse Jackson to town. This was at the beginning of the campaign, and people began to understand that SEIU 1877 was really putting in the resources that were necessary for this campaign to take place.
What would you say you learned from the civil rights movement that informed your approach to this campaign?
First of all, building a coalition, you have to build a coalition, you make it wider. They asked Lane to get involved because they wanted a bigger coalition. They wanted to reach people that they weren't reaching. And so one of the things as a civil rights leader you do one-on-ones, you do We had some community meetings. We had a couple of rallies, just in the black community, to let them know that it was very important that, as a civil rights. And then of course their civil rights of the workers were being challenged because they weren't getting the benefits. They weren't getting the necessities for living. They weren't getting protection on their jobs, and they couldn't protect the community if they themselves weren't being protected. So we realized that that was very important in this instance, and so you could sell that. It was a civil rights issue, it was a woman's rights issue, and it was, of course, a black issue. And so it began, it just broke down into that, and we just began to operate in that way.
What strategies did you use to maintain pressure on groups like building owners?
Well, we rallied a lot. We went to their meetings. We would take multicultural people to their meetings, and it wasn't just African Americans, but Latinos and whites that were there at the various meetings. And we would be on the outside of their meetings, marching around, letting them hear us, scream at them. And whenever we could, we would meet them one-on-one if we could, try to catch them at different places, really doing that aggressive, nonviolent type of activity that was important.
How did you address concerns about SEIU's long-term commitment?
Well, one of the things that was very important that we said to SEIU, that the way that you really form and make sure that this is ongoing is we have to have African American leadership. And we went back and forth with them. And so one time I went up to New York to a big meeting of the union, and I was emphasizing to them then that, we want a black leadership. That's important. That's number one. And we had a lot of people in our coalition that stood by that, and it was important to us that, a black will lead this campaign. And that got through. Ongoing, that has been the case up until now, that there have been people of African American descent leading this campaign. It was important for that message to be made.
Did you have any closing thoughts?
Well, yes. I think we have to. I saw some of the names that are being interviewed, but there are a lot of other names too that were integral parts of this campaign. Right after I left the organizing and strategy from Lane, Danny Tabor came and did it for a while, and then my wife came, Pastor Tambakile Christian Coleman Smart. She came and led all these years that Lane was involved in this campaign with the strategy, with the community organizing, and then just making sure that all of the various players in the community were on one page. And that was not an easy thing to do, because you had various ideas and peoples, you had various initiatives people have, and there were times in meetings people walked out. People from the community walked out. And so it took a lot of one-on-ones, a lot of looking at the big picture. One of the things that this campaign, when we were involved, it really showed that you have to have a big picture. And we instilled that in everybody that was a part of it. It's not about us. It's about, and the motif we would always lift up was, it's about that $50 million that was coming into the South LA community. And that would affect all of us and help us in the economic growth and prospect that would never happen again. Well, I have such a history on this. You do. I should have said that one of the biggest players right here. I met with Dr. Karenga. I went all the way over to Long Beach and met with him one-on-one and told him about, his importance. And when he got involved, one of the things, is it still on? Well, one of the things, we changed the narrative in such a way that you have that sister that just was in here, she instituted something, and we stopped saying that what the Latinos phrase si se puede, and we started saying ahula sasa, freedom now. That changed the narrative. That changed the way that we were going and what we could be. We made it a black campaign. Chambuco, we made it a black campaign by you instituting the words ahula sasa, freedom now. Amen.
Brother Smart, I'm glad you said that. That's so true. That's what happened.
Ahula sasa, freedom now. We were marching up to what's his name, what's his name? And that sister said, Pastor, no, Pastor. Her and her crew, and she said, I said, well, do something else. She said, ahula sasa, freedom now. Okay. And that became our crying call.
That's right.
OASC proudly recognizes a fraction of those responsible for the success of the SEIU Black Security Officers Unionization campaign in Los Angeles, a landmark example of how labor organizing can be a tool for racial and economic justice. It not only transformed the lives of thousands of Black security officers, but also reshaped the labor movement's approach to addressing systemic inequality. Its impact continues to inspire campaigns that prioritize equity, dignity, and the empowerment of underrepresented workers.